Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel where tech meets creativity, and today's automation video will be looking at the REFramework. In the previous video we did look at the REFramework, the default one that works with the queue of the orchestrator within the UiPath ecosystem. But today we'll be looking at how you can use the same REFramework, but this time around with tabular data. And the tabular data that you'll be working with, it will be an Excel file, and you'll be working with rows. So this time around, instead of working with queue items, we'll be working with DataRows. And we saw that in the previous video we didn't have to do much work, we just had to go straight away into development. But today we might do some tweaking here and there to adjust the REFramework to be in position to work with tabular data instead of the queue items. Yeah, we'll be seeing that in play. So what we'll be doing, so it's the same process. I'll be using the same process. We looked at the dispatcher where we're logging into ACME, and we're navigating to a vendor list, and we had skipped out this part in the previous video. This wasn't part of that, right? And then we from straight after extracting this from the ACME system, we were straight, since we were already extracting it from using the extract data table activity. So the output that we're getting was in tabular data, to be more precise, the data table. So we just uploaded it directly to the queue. So this time around, so what I did, I just changed, I just omitted this time around, and I want to remove these. Yep. Let's close these. Yeah, so this time around, what we'll be doing with the dispatcher, I already did this. Won't be going this. I'm showing what I did. So instead of uploading via queue, since we're not working with the UiPath Orchestrator, we just logged in there, and then I wrote the data to Excel. So that's what I did. So that was with the vendor. It was our vendor collector, right? This was the vendor collector. Yeah. Save. Vendor collector. If I come in process, yeah. If I come in process, actually let me change the resolution. Yeah, so this is okay. So when I come to the process, then I navigate to the point where we are uploading the queue items. I just commented out this part where we're doing the upload from. So this is where I was iterating through the data table. So I just commented that out, and I'm just writing now data directory too. So that's the data set that we'll be working with. So I have my data there, just writing it from here. This is where I'm writing the data from. So I'll just navigate to this point to open my input file, so that you can have a look at the data. I'm opening the file. This is how it looks like. So we have vendor, tax ID, address, city, country. Yeah, so this is the same data. that are open in new, like this here. I open my orchestrator. So this is the data that we'll be working with. So the last time we were pushing it to the orchestrator queue, but this time around we'll be working with Excel. So this is the data. I want to just show you the same here in Excel, in Orchestrator. So then Orchestrator, if I come to queues, to my queues, then vendor queue, we did look at this and then view transactions. So all these, so now these were different transaction queue items. Now we're working with DataRows. So these are the different rows of data. So each row of data, if you recall, if I show you here, view details, you see, we're keeping the vendor tax ID, address, city, country, which is correspondent to this, which is exactly the same. Yeah, so enough of the orchestrator, because we're not looking at that today. I just wanted to show you the correlation so that you can easily follow along, borrowing from the previous video. If you haven't looked at the video, you can click. It will be somewhere here. You can click and view the video. Yeah, so but even though you haven't watched it, you can follow along. You can still watch it after at the end of the video. So this is our data that we'll be working with, about 14 rows of data. So we'll see how we're gonna be integrating it into our orchestrator. So go ahead and open our project. This is my project. Init lookup. These are my project details. Just the description of saying I'm calling it using tabular data. Excel. I showed you how you can create a project using the REFramework. You come here in home. I come home. Then here you click on Robotic Enterprise Framework. Create your project. So that's how you created mine. So I'll come back here. So this is how it looks like, and we're gonna be doing some amendments. But before doing that, we'll be doing that following this document here. So this is a checklist ref without queue items. So I'll be showing you where you can get this at the end of the video, where you can get it from within the UiPath Academy. I'll be showcasing that. Yeah, so the prerequisites, we have to identify the data type of the automation, because it's not only tied to tabular data. You could be working with any type of data. It could be tabular, it could be tabular data, it could be an API. Yeah, so this is the document. So we identify the data the automation needs for each transaction. So it could differ, like we saw in the previous, we're working queue items. It could be a data row, it could be an API, or any data source. So it's telling us configuration studio. This is a checklist for ref without. So telling us you create a project. We have seen that create a project, then the configuration file. So I'll come to the configuration file to set our variables that we'll be working with. So I'll come, this is my project, open my data and configuration file. I'm following the document. So I don't need this because remember we're not working with queues. So I'll just delete this. So the business name, I'll borrow this, the one for the project, vendor tax ID lookup. I'll borrow this, just copy, then paste here. That's that. Then my input file, our input file. So that's the name. I already have it on my clipboard. Yeah, so this is I just supply the path here, input file. That's gonna be our input file. Then ACME Credentials. ACME Credentials. That should be the name of my credential. I'll also call it here, I just call it ACME _ credentials. This doesn't anything you name it, whether it is the same name, whether it differs the same. So I'll create my ACME credentials. Yeah, so we're just gonna be opening ACME, logging in, then the data source. This will be our data source, then we'll be looping through these. Yeah, so I'll create my ACME credentials. Since today we're not working with Orchestrator, so we will be working with Windows credentials. So you just navigate to Windows credentials. Manage Windows credentials. Then I click on Windows credentials. Then I come add a Windows credential. I already created mine, but you can also do this. You just click on add generic credential. Here, internet or network address. This could be like the name of your credentials, like here, this name, ACME Credentials, or this one, sorry, the value, ACME Credentials. You could put it there, then your logins to ACME. So I already created mine, as you can see here. So the internet or network address, I have it as ACME Credentials, then my username, then my password. So within the settings, that's it. We're not working with assets. We're not working with any assets, and with the constants, we'll be leaving these as is for now. We'll be leaving these as is. But for maximum number of retries, this you can always change this, as you see in the description saying must be 0 if you're working with orchestrator queues. If greater than 0, the robot will retry the same transaction which failed with a system exception. Must be given an integer value. So the same, if you're working with orchestrator queues, maybe so I could say maybe retry. I could, in case of an exception, I could give it 2. So it depends. It could vary, and depending on the use case, depending on your practices that you follow within your organization. Yeah, so that's why it's configurable within this file. So maximum consecutive, so telling us the number of consecutive system exceptions allowed. If maximum consecutive system exception is reached, the job is stopped. To disable this feature, set the value to 0. So for now, I'll be leaving them as is. I won't be making any adjustments here. So I'll close, config file, I'll save. vendor lookup. So we are following the document. Yeah. So I'm done with the configurations. These configurations, I've set up my assets, created my assets, constant sheets. We've done that. I've closed, I've saved, we're through that. So now they're changing us to change the transaction type, data type. So in main, so we'll be doing this part. Edit. So I'm following this closely. So if you come here in main, and then I come into variables, you see I have a transaction item, and it's of variable type, transaction item. Sorry, queue item, not transaction item. So we'll be changing this from from queue item to data row. So I come in browse types, then I type in data row. So I'll go with this, select it up, press OK. So save. After doing that, if I come back, you see that I have some warnings within the get transaction data, and as well as in the process transaction, I have a warning. So this warning is because I've changed the transaction type from queue item to data row, and in these transactions, you will find that the transaction item variable is still a queue item. So we do the same. We change. You even see it's telling us here, look at transaction variables in panel, what we have just done. Then the transaction data in the variable panel, change the required type. So they're also mentioning about this transaction type, data type, transaction. Okay, it's this one, but it's already a data table, which is okay. So you don't need to change it. It's one that they're referring to as the transaction data. So they're telling us locate the get transaction data state, which is this one, and they're telling us to locate end process, usually to still make the amendments of changing transaction item to a data row. So I'll show you a trick that I normally use. So I've saved. So I'll come into project here. So I'll navigate to the main XAML, then right click. So I'll open it with VSCode. You could use any code editor. Personally, I use VSCode. You could use a Notepad++. You could also use Notepad. As you can see, they're also available here. But I'll be using Visual Studio Code. So I'll open here, Visual Studio Code. So in the Visual Studio Code, I'll maximize. So in the Visual Studio Code, I'll search for queue item. Then I'll come here. So if you look at this, we have queue item. I'll paste it as it appears. So it is UI queue item as it appears there. So I'll also search for data row. So for data row type, it is this. Then paste it here. It is SD data row. So all the queue item, I replace all the queue items with data row. Instead of changing it from UiPath, I've just changed it at once within the code. Within VSCode, I've just opened the XAML file in my code editor. Then I'm replacing the UI as the queue item as it appears, because this is how the queue item is represented within XAML when you open it from the code editor. This is how the queue item comes. It is UI semicolon queue item. So I'll just replace everything. Then I'll save. Then I'll close. Oh, yeah, I'll save and close. Okay, so I'll close here as well. So I'll close, then I'll try to open the project afresh. So you see, I no longer have the warnings, just like that. So if I go ahead and open, yeah, it's also giving me a warning that the following arguments are missing. Configured out transaction. So when I try to open, and I open here, so you see my out transaction item. It's already typed DataRows instead of being a queue item because we have changed it from the other side. So it's subtype system DataRows. So I'll do that again. So I just need to refresh arguments and all will be well. I'll refresh. So going back to our document, in process, so you see we have skipped all these. We just need to refresh it a little bit and all will be well. Process, we have changed all these because all these steps from here to here, it was about changing the transaction item to a from queue item to a DataRows item to a DataRows data type. So then they're telling us applications to be used. We have seen how this works in the previous video. So in the Init application, this should contain activities where we're opening our applications, authentication and stuff. So for this time around, we're going to be doing something different because remember, we're not working with the orchestrator queues. So we created our credentials within the Windows credentials. So how do we access those within UiPath? So let's see how we access those in UiPath. So I'm going to use a couple of activities by a couple of workflows. So I'll just open the other folder. This is the one for what am I looking for? This one, the data collector. So just use these workflows. So I'll copy this entire folder, copy, then I'll come into this project and my project, try to paste. Yeah, it is pasted. So I'll come into login. So the logins, we're not working with Orchestrator, so I'll just comment this out using Ctrl D. Yep, commented it out. So then how to install some package. So type in again, get secure credentials. Okay, so I'm trying to look up the credentials. So I'll look up here about the credentials. Yeah, they're there. So install this. So I've installed the UiPath credentials. You can even see them here in the dependencies. I've installed UiPath credentials.activities. So when I come back to my login, and then I come back to my activity is get secure credentials. This enables me to be able to get to pick credentials from the Windows credentials. So how are we going to do that? So we'll be picking the value from the config file. So this is what we're going to be doing. So if I come in data, then config, settings, I'm getting this name, copying the name, it's there on my clipboard. I don't need to save, then save. So I'll go back to Studio. So I create an argument here. I call it config. And give it a type of what? You see, I'm lazy. Let me just do this. I'll come to main, come to variables, copy this variable, come to login, come to the variables panel, paste the config here, then I'll just convert it to an argument. Then I'll delete this, then I'll change the name to inconfig_. So I'll just get the inconfig here, then I'll paste in this name, then to string. So this is how we access the value that is in our settings in the config file. So this is our sample data. So in the config file, this part, this is how we accessing these credentials that are stated in our Windows credentials domain that we saw. So that's how we access that in here. So if I click on this activity, you see that it's giving me an output of the password. So I already have these variables, the password, and because we were using them in the get credential activity, the one that was pulling them from the orchestrator. So yeah, so we already have our username and password variables. So I just apply them here, password. So also the one for the get secure credentials is also secure password. So I don't need to make any change on that. So I'll leave them as is. I'll just apply the variables. Once that's done, we'll log in. Yeah, that's it. So you can test it out to see. I'm getting an exception of secure variable used outside the operation scope. Let me try encapsulating it in its own sequence. We come into activities, then I get sequencing. Then I'll put this in here. I call it credentials. And I'll change this to the credential scope. And getting a one link. So I'll do this. this, put it here. Also carry this, put it here. So I'd put it in the same scope, and I hope that resolves the issue. So I'll save and I'll run again. So it's compiling, all is well. So it's saying get credential. Yeah. So this is happening. It's saying object reference not sets to an instance of an object, reason being the in config dictionary hasn't been populated with the values, because remember in the REFramework, within the initialization stage, that's where the configurations are read there. So you see workflow contains activities to start the application, perform authentication, and also initialize configurations required for all the transactions. So since we haven't, since the initialization hasn't happened, that's why I've gotten that error. But the assumption is it will work. So then we close. So within here, within the close all applications workflow, you can add in activities for logging out and closing your application. So in the queue, you can also add in, like we saw in the previous videos, how you were able to kill the Excel and also the Chrome. So it's a matter of just reusing those. So then the next part is the processing of the transactions, and this will bring us to the get transaction state. So I'll go back to my studio. So I'll close. So within I'll come to main. Then my main, collapse this. Then I'll come to this get transaction state. So I'll double click. Then I'll navigate to this part where I'm invoking the get transaction data XAML. So I'll open it. So when I open it, since we are not working with the orchestrator queues, and as we already saw in the configuration file here, I removed everything associated with the orchestrator queues. As we already moved everything that's associated with the orchestrator queues, so I no longer need this activity. So I'll drag this. So when you try to delete it from here, for some reason you're unable to delete it. So I'll first drag. So I'm dragging it here, and then after I'll delete it from here. Alright. So this is what's gonna happen. In our, do we have our input data? So right, I'll open the config file. So the config file has our input file, right? Input file. So I just need to navigate where this file is stored. So it is in my input. Let me first get it from here. So I'll copy this file, right? Then I'll paste it in here in my input folder. But at the end of the day, it can be anywhere in the file, but I just want everything in my project folder. So I have my vendor, which is my input file. So within the main, take you back in the initialization. You see this part where it says if first run, read all configurations file. So in here, within where we're initializing the settings, this is where I'll be reading my input file into my DT transaction data, this variable because we're not working with orchestrator queues. So I'll come into my activities. I use a read range activity. So I use this one. I'll drag it and put it here. So I'll come, go to input, then I'll select my file, sheet name. Sheet name is vendor data, vendor data. I hope I got it right. Let me just open it to be sure. Same file, it's already open. So I just come here. It's vendor data. Let me just copy and paste so that I don't make any errors. So I'll paste vendor data here. Then I'll read, including the headers. My output, I'll be inputting it in my DT transaction data. So that's where I'll be putting my file. So I have that captured, right? So if I come in my get transaction data, right? You see in here in the arguments, if I open arguments here, you see that in the I have an IO DT transaction data, which is a data table, and it's getting its value from the DT transaction data. So within my argument this, which is within my get transaction data XAML file, I have access to the data that we have just read from Excel. So I come back to my get transaction data. So in here, I'll do this. I'll come into my activities, and I get an if activity. Put it here. So in the if activity, remember I first deleted the get transaction queue item. I first deleted that. After deleting that, I've dragged my if activity. So within the if activity, I'm using this condition. So I'm picking this data table variable. Then I'm using it to access the number of rows. So I'm saying this transaction data dot row count. If the number of rows is greater or equal to, we have an in argument here called in transaction number. If so the condition is checking if the row dot count is greater than the in transaction number. If that's the case, then I come here, pick my assign activity, and I'm saying out, then this out transaction. Remember this transaction item now is the data row. So I'm saying now the IntelliSense is already helping me for I thought the AI, the autopilot for everyone. I thought it was at play. So I'll just for that value I'll get this transaction data, then I'll access that .rows method. Then I'll say the in transaction number -1. So that's how I'll be able to getting an error. So it's saying it's incompatible. So if I come here, yeah, so the error is saying the data row cannot be converted to a queue item. Yes, so I have to change this for some reason. This didn't change, so I have to change this from queue item to a data row. So I'll come data row. Pick the data, my data row type, and it should solve the error. Yeah, so we're good to go. So what's basically I'm saying, if the rows.count is greater or equal to the in transaction number, the in transaction number is there's, I want to show you that bit of information about the in transaction, which was in the other activity that I deleted. But basically, it helps us to track the item that's being processed. So that's what basically it helps us to do. So that's why you see that in here I keep on I keep on what? This is what enables this logic here. It's the one that enables the bot to be able to loop through the data table or the tabular data. We would have, even though you could use the for each, but with the for each, the tracking, we're going to be leveraging the superpowers of what? Of the REFramework. But with leveraging the REFramework instead of using a for each, because even though you use it, it would work. We are able to use these arguments like the transaction number, which helps you to track your items properly. So that's it for that. And in the event that this condition is false, so we just pushing out. I'll just copy this, and I'm just pushing it out to be nothing. So I'll say nothing. So when it's nothing, that's when it will transition to the end what? To the end process state. Yeah, so I have my condition, or I'm accessing the data table, and I'm doing a rows.count method to get the number of rows in that data table, and I'm saying if they are greater than the transaction number, right? Then if that's true, then I'm giving my transaction item, assigning it to literally the first index of the Excel. So I'm using the rows method to be able to access the index of the row. So this is what's happening. So this is my file, right? It is within my data table. This data here, right, is within this in data table transaction row. Yeah. So I'm doing a row.count. So if I do a row.count, it will come here. Definitely a row.count. I'm having more than one count. So this would definitely be true, right? So my in transaction number has a default value. If I show you here, if I come in main, show it from main, transaction number. So you see the transaction number here, it's 1, as you can see there. So meaning, get transaction. So meaning, I'm having more than one rows of data, because it will return about 14, because I have 14 rows of data, because the first row is a header, right? So I'm causing that. So I'm coming in here, so it will be, if I increase in here like that, so the in transaction number, right, it's 1, so -1, it gives me 0. So with this, I'm able to access the first item within my data table. So literally, this is the logic that we have added within the get transaction item. That's what it does basically. I hope the point has landed, so I'll carry on. So I'll keep on following the document. So here it's saying let's change the data type of the out transaction from queue to required type, change the in argument data from the data to the required type. It's already made this delete, did that, store the transaction data in DT. We already did this. This is the part where if necessary. So you see it's telling us store the transaction data in this if necessary, because there is you could also read the file from here, but for me I decided to read it from here, from the other part where from the main, the initialization, this part where we have the first one. This is where I decided to read the file from here, but you could as well have read it from here, though the logic changes a bit. Yeah, so for the get transaction data, that's it for that. We have seen the changes. So I'll come in my process XAML file. So in the process XAML file, that's where I'm not uploading any data to Orchestrator, because remember we're looping through. So I'll just reuse the same logic that we used in the previous project. So I'll just come to here, and then I look for, what was it again? This one. Vendor lookup bot. Open this project. Yeah, so I'll come into my ACME workflows. So then I'll pick this, I'll copy. Then I'll come to the ACME workflows. I'll paste it here. So I'll come and open it. What amendment am I making? Yeah, in the previous video, I made this had to be an hyphen, not a comma. So that's I'll make that amendment. What else? It's taking in the index ID, so that's okay. So this is okay, because remember we're accessing the value from here. So what you want to be able to access this value, because the one that you'll be putting here. I want to show you here in this argument. That's where I'll be putting the task ID. So I'll come to my main, then go back a bit. I'll come to the process XAML. Open process. I'll refresh because we haven't refreshed here after the amendments of the Q2. So yes, I'll change this to a data row. It's a data row that's taking in. Do we have the transaction item? Save. Refresh. Transaction item. Data row. So I'll open this and I'll drag this to here. So I'll try to refresh. So this is taking in a task ID. So I'm accessing it from the in transaction. So this, I'm accessing the column. This one, colon tax ID to string. I guess it is still a queue item. Let me see. Just save as is. Save. Then I'll come to the arguments. Then I'll change this to a data row. For some reason, I don't know. I guess that some parts need change, but you can always follow along in the document as I'll be showing at the end. Like this document, how you gain access, because usually this is the, as the name goes, check ref without queue item. This is, I'm only kept on just ticking all these boxes, so you can follow, you'll be able to follow along as well. Yeah, so I have my arguments aligned properly. That's okay. What else? Now within my Init application, did I my Init, I'll come in my framework, then Init applications. So this is where I'll access the login component from. Now drop it here. Like so, refresh. Yeah, so in here you see that if you're using the same version like me, you find this challenge. Yeah? So you see this in config file, it's a dictionary, but every time, because I have to equate it to this in config that's here, that's also a dictionary. But every time I try to directly just try to put the value here, it gives me a key value for some reason, I don't know, but this is odd. So what I did, this is what you're supposed to do. So you have to first change the data type to like a string, then you come in the value, you put your in config, so it will throw an error, right? String incompatible, so you come, then you change it back to the dictionary, and then you save. So that's how I went about that. So yeah, I feel like everything is in place, and according to our check, we're at the end. So fingers crossed, all is well. But what's the expectation? The expectation is the bot should be able to log into our ACME system, then iterate through this Excel file, right? Iterate through this entire Excel file from point, iterate through these entire rows from 2 to 15, while downloading the corresponding data from the ACME. So we're gonna see it in play, fingers crossed. So I'll go ahead and run. I also yeah, one more change to make, because one more change before. So if I come to extract, not extract, in main, initialization, and the initialization here, right? So here we have our input file, so I'll be reading it from the input file, not evoking it directly from here. So I'll be reading it from here. How do I do that? We looked at it, so I'll say in config. So I'm accessing in this, it's called config. So then I'm accessing input file, then to string. So that value will hold my path to the input data. So that's the only amendment that I'm making. Fingers crossed, now I'm running. So it's telling me that object not set to reference. So meaning, yeah, it hasn't been able to, yeah, this reason being that init all settings workflow has to come above the read because the initialization hasn't happened. Yes, so I'll stop. And I'll take this, put this here. Yeah, and I will run again. So I have to close the Excel file, config file. And I restart. So it's opening the web application. So I need to problem is here, so I have to change this to transaction item. So say the transaction item. I'll change this to that. That's okay. That's where the problem is coming from. Let me run now on the time. Let me see. I have to log out. Log out. Let me run. Not debug. Let me just run. Just logging in. Now it is iterating through the. So it's saying when it's done. Yeah, so the issue that we are facing of the transaction just looping through the same item is because originally we were working with orchestrator queues. We were updating the status. If you recall, when we had just uploaded the status, the queue item, it had a status of new. Then after processing it, we are updating the status to successful. So in this case, we were still hitting that block, and it was us after changing the status, we were incrementing so that we can tackle or hand another data item. So in this case, we're getting a blocker from there. So what I'll be doing, I'll just be doing away with that part where we're updating the orchestrator queue item. Then I'll just so that you can get to that point where you're incrementing the rows and you're able to iterate through.
And I remove this even in the config file. So I'll just collapse this, then I'll comment it out using my Control D on my keyboard. I'll save, then I'll do the same throughout. Come here, collapse, collapse, and Control D, collapse it, then Control D. I'll do the same for the system exception as well. So I'll comment out this. Now collapse it, and we should be good to go. So fingers crossed. I'm running again. So the expectation is to repeat for you what we expected. This is the input file. So we'll be looping through this to the end of the ACME. So I'll close as well. So I'll just run open on the other side of the screen. So I'll bring it here. So it is signing in. We need to put a bit of a delay. It's moving fast. So if you can the output. Yeah. So one transaction has been processed. Processing transaction 2. So yeah, as well. So let's first leave it to process, then we'll check after. So you see now it's looping through the transaction. So exactly how we did it for the previous one where we're working with orchestrator queues. Now we're just working with the Excel, but now we see that it's looping through. So we'll investigate the output after. So you see, just change the sources where we keep and retrieve our data, but ideally the architecture is a bit different, but it still serves the same purpose. So given the kind of scenario that you're working with, so it's always up to you as an RPA developer to see how you can solution. As my primary teacher always said, there are always many ways of killing a rat. There are many methods of killing a rat. It's not a single way. Yeah. That should be the last one. Put in, and we're good. So if I want to close here, I can come in my close applications. Then I get my user activity. browser activity, like so. Then I indicate screen, already have this. Then I get my click. Quick logout. Validate. Confirm. Then I come here in properties. In the open, I'll say, if not open. So this, it can automatically close within the REFramework when it gets to that point. Yeah, so I can now in my output investigate my output. I refresh. So you see I have my files here. Go to folder, data, output. So I have my files. I also change from comma to hyphen. So when I check, I see that I have my data here. So that's how you can go about working with tabular data in queues. So I'd mentioned that I'll be showing you where you can go and find the other document that we are following in the video. So what you do, you just come to Academy, this link academy.uipath.com. So if you don't have an account here, you have to create one. You see, personally, I already do have an account. So you come to learning plans, right? Click on learning plans. And then when you click on learning plans, you navigate to this course here, Automation Developer Operational Training. You click on it. Then if yours might not be resumed, but you click here, then you come on learning plan structure. So when you come in learning plan structure, I want you to come to Automation Developer Professional Training. Once you're here, I want you to come to we're building a REFramework project with tabular data. So you click on resume. No, it might not be resume for you, it might be start. Once you do that, you can come here, you see, in the REFramework without queues checklist. And you download it, it's here. So you download it from here. Yeah, so that's it for today's video. We have looked at the tabular data with how you can work with the REFramework without the queues, without the orchestrator queues. So if you did find the video useful, you can drop a comment, like, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, so that you're always notified every time I upload a new video. Yeah, so see you in the next video. I'm out.